you say we chose here, I would say there's a cosmic need for us to be on the planet right now. There's a little bit of astrology and there's a little bit of football in here. You know, our coach will say, it doesn't matter who we're playing, do your job. So right, to me, we all have a part to play. And when most people are looking at and wondering what's going to happen, right, that energy that's going on there, right, that's not doing your job. So I get it. I want to know what's happening, but to me, it's from a certain kind of ignorance. Because once you know yourself, once you found that mirror that reflects truth back to you, you know what to do, and you become a powerful dynamic for change.
Hey guys, I'm Aubrey. On this show, we explore the intersection of mysticism, technology, art, and transpersonal experience. I'm an entrepreneur, author, and cosmic advisor, covering human consciousness and the larger forces shaping our collective destiny. Welcome to the Infinite Drop.
Alrighty.
Okay, cool. I do not need much of an intro for today's guest. Ricky Williams is a Heisman Trophy winner, was a star running back in the NFL for 11 seasons. He has studied Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and today works as a full-time astrologer after initially studying with famed evolutionary astrologer Steven Forrest. Ricky, welcome to the Infinite Drop.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. I was really glad you were able to come on. So, you were recently on Barstool Sports and you were talking astrology. And I became really intrigued when you gave that analogy that leveraging astrology is similar to how a football coach would never go into season or a game without a playbook, a scouting report, a game plan.
Yeah.
And you said most people are living their entire lives with zero preparation. There's no framework. And that astrology gives you tools like a football coach has.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I'm curious, like, what your first experiences with astrology were and how you came to have this be your full-time focus.
Yeah. Well, my first experience came when I was a kid, and I learned about Gemini, the twins, because I'm a Gemini and I have a twin sister. So that's how I learned about it. I had no idea what it meant, but even when I was in college, I got a Gemini tattoo on my chest. And it wasn't until I was lost, until I was utterly lost, that I found astrology. And it was after I retired from the NFL in 2004. I retired twice. The first retirement in 2004, I just walked away from football. And at that point, I thought I would never come back. And I knew in my mind that I was done with football, but I had no idea what was coming next. And you mentioned I studied Ayurveda. And so while studying Ayurveda, we had a yoga class. It was part of our curriculum. We had Tuesdays and Thursdays, we had yoga. And the second module of yoga was a traditional kind of yoga called Shivananda yoga. And there was an ashram about 25 minutes from where my school was. So one of the swamis from the ashram came to teach the class. And after the class, I was so blown away. I had the deepest relaxation I'd ever had in my whole life. And I went up to him and I said, Swami, where can I get more of this? And he said, there's an ashram 25 minutes down the road. We have classes twice a day, so come anytime. So that next Saturday, I decided to wake up early in the morning and catch the early morning yoga class. And after class, they always have brunch. So I was sitting at brunch, and another Swami, the head Swami of the retreat, Swami Sita, someone told her I was a football player. And so I was sitting down on the ground eating, and she came up to me and she said, "Where's your Mars?" And I looked up at her, and I'd been hanging around Ayurveda people, so I kind of knew she was talking about astrology. And I said, "I have no idea." And she said, "Do you know what time you were born?" And I have a twin sister, so I said, "Yes." And she said, "When you're done eating, come up to my office. I want to talk to you." So I finished eating and I walked up the hill to her office and I sat down. She asked me what time I was born. She put it in information in her computer. And then we had the most amazing 3-hour conversation. And I wouldn't say it was a reading. She would listen to me. She would glance at the chart, she would sit and think, and then she would say things. And the one thing I remember most powerfully from that experience was realizing that I had a habit of running towards stress. You know? And when she said it, and I, I thought about it and I was like, oh wow. Something that was so obvious when she said it, but to me it was so natural, I didn't even consider it. And also I was at a yoga ashram, and I had the realization that I didn't have to do that anymore, that I could start to
Oh.
change the pattern. Later, I come to find out my south node of the moon is in the sign of Aries, conjunct the planet Mars, which would be an
I knew it was Aries. I knew it was Aries. I'm like, you're a running back. It's a Mars and Aries.
yeah, Mars. It's Mars, and it's Mars and Aries conjunct the south node. And the funny thing is, she didn't know my chart. She didn't know me, but the issue I came in this lifetime to solve, and the issue that she brought up right away was my Mars. And that was a turning point in my life because I realized the past pattern, and I could see a glimpse of what the future could hold if I could move in a different direction. And I was in a place to receive the tools to start to move. And after that, I was hooked. I asked her if she would teach me everything she knew, and she did. And since then, for the most part, sometimes you get overwhelmed and you have to take a month or two off. But for the most part, for the last 21 years now, it's been right at 21 years. I've been all in studying this science, this art, this way of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard recently, I don't remember which astrologer it was, but they said, "Mm, when astrology finds you, if it's meant for you, you will just never be able to stop looking at it." And there is something so fascinating about knowing what's happening in the skies, and that's how it's affecting us collectively. And then once you study enough and you have the foundations, you can start to look how it's maybe affecting you personally and know when it's time to push or when it's time, to set back and allow things to happen and flow through. I'm interested also, so you have your south node conjunct your Mars. My south node is exactly conjunct my sun at a 29-degree, and learning, as you learn kind of that onion, kind of unpeeling an onion and the layers, I think, "Oh, I've solved it." And then another layer comes off. I'm like, "Oh god, I'm such a baby. I'm such a child. I don't know what I'm doing." So, yeah.
Common experience. That
Mhm.
to me, that is the experience of astrology, because consciousness is infinite. And for me,
Mhm.
astrology is a tool for consciousness. I want to agree with something you said and add something to it.
Mhm.
Astrology is great to see and get a sense of when it's time to move, when it's time to do different things. But I found astrology most useful as like a tuning fork. Because some people look at astrology, but to me, and we talked about this. Astrology is like a magic mirror, and if someone truly can see themselves clearly, they don't really need the chart anymore, because they know what to do. The only reasons we don't know what to do, and it's not that we haven't been given a game plan, it's just we've been given a bad game plan. We've been given one that's not really about us. It's about the average. And I know because I know your chart that you are super sensitive to this. You mentioned the south node in Aquarius. Oh, wow, right? Aquarius is the sign that rules astrology. And to me, one of the things at the core of Aquarius is learning to think for oneself. So if everyone is trying to say this is the right way for everyone, that's not going to work in the age of Aquarius. It's more about finding what is right for me. And that's why I love the image of the mirror. Mirror, mirror on the wall. And you see yourself clearly, you know what to do in every situation. And you mentioned Gruden. In football, that's really what coaches are trying to get us to do, is be prepared to show up, to execute in any situation, to know who we are, what our assignments are, what we're trying to accomplish, and we drill it. And when the moment shows up, we meet the moment. And that's the way, I mean, that's my training for the past forever. So
Yeah.
that's the way I kind of look at everything. And when I started thinking about astrology more deeply, it kind of went into that groove of the playbook, the game plan, and the scouting report.
I loved when I heard you say that, I was like, "Oh, that is such a good," like, I mean, I don't know what those look like in reality, I've never seen them, but I can imagine a scouting report, like they're scouting other teams and players. They know, like, this guy's, whatever, quick on his feet, or this guy can go, goes left when he should go right. What's happening on the field. You have that situational awareness. That's what I love about it. And yeah, it's very interesting. One of the you were mentioning my chart, and one of the markers that I've just known in my life is that I have a very strong, like, warrior, fierce aversion to following anything that the government says, anything teachers say. I mean, I would get in trouble. I'd be sent to the principal's office because a teacher would say something and I would say, "Well, that doesn't make sense." And I would say, "Why?" And they would say that was disrespectful, but I basically kind of embarrassed them.
Yeah.
And it's been that way, especially, the last 6 years. I would say I've eased off of it, but there were a few years where I went hard. I was like, What's going on? Like, we need to be using our brains." And I was canceled,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um,
So, if Steve was here, my teacher Steven, he would laugh, and he would say, "You've been being canceled for lifetimes."
damn it. It
And
feels so familiar. Like, it's even in my friend groups, I have some friends who say, "Oh, you're bringing this upon yourself. You're playing a victim." And then some friends who have seen it happen, and they go, "This is uncanny. Like, you really end up becoming a scapegoat." They're like, "This is crazy." I said, "I'm kind of used to it by now."
yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll see how it all plays out. So, yeah, you studied under Steven Forrest. He's one of the architects of evolutionary astrology, which it integrates psychology with metaphysics. And then from there, from what I understand, you worked to develop what you call the strongest planet approach. So, first, I've never heard of this. I'd love to learn more. And then, how would it affect how somebody might look at their birth chart or how they might understand the transits they're experiencing?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say the strongest planet. The idea that there's a chart ruler, that there's a planet that's stronger than the rest, has really been around since the beginning of astrology. But the different systems and the ways people, no one's come to any kind of consensus. I told the story when I first started studying astrology. That first type of astrology I started studying was Jyotish or Vedic astrology. And in the Vedic astrology software, as soon as you put the chart in, you get a graph. They call it Shad Bala, which means 6 strengths. And so my first introduction to astrology, there was a graph showing how strong each of the planets were. And in Vedic astrology, it's really all about the planets. They don't really talk about the signs. They'll talk about your ascendant, they'll talk about your moon nakshatra, but they don't really talk about the signs. The grahas, or the things that grab us. The planets are what's primary. Then when I switched over to Western astrology, everyone talked about the signs, and people acted like the planets kind of didn't exist almost. So that didn't rub me right. So I just kept studying and reading and reading, and I came across a writer, an astrologer named C.C. Zane, who wrote in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and he came up with an algorithm to measure planetary strength, or it's to measure astrological strength. They're called astrodynes. And one of the things that I pulled out of there, he called it the dominant planet. And it jumped out. For me, the strongest planet, or the dominant planet, is the moon. For you, the strongest planet is Mercury. Okay. So here's the power of it. Okay. If an astrologer were looking at your chart, they would probably talk about Mercury because it rules the ascendant. So they would likely bring it in, but they might miss that the most important thing in your existence, right, is this Mercury, that you're a messenger. When we spoke last week, you talked about the mirror, you know, and if I had to come up with one symbol in astrology that represented a mirror, it would be the seventh house. It's the thing that is opposing us that reflects back to us things.
And that's where my Mercury is.
That's where your Mercury is, right? And so the idea of ruler of the first and the seventh reflecting back, oh, it's that, and also Pisces is a water sign, right? This idea of reflecting in the water,
Mhm.
reflecting in the water, and and also it's Mercury, the messenger of the gods. So the type of astrology I do focus on the strongest planet, but more generally speaking, I focus on planets. I'll talk about signs as a coloring or a flavoring to a planet, but if you think about it, we wouldn't be talking about the signs if there were no planets in them. So the way I introduce newbies to astrology is I try to create a simple definition. Astrology is the study of the influence of celestial objects on human affairs, right?
Yeah.
Celestial objects, you can call them planets, but if we look closely, we could also call them gods. You know, before they were Roman, named after Roman gods, they were named after Greek gods. Before
Mhm.
that, they were named after Mesopotamian gods.
Yep.
And to this day, if you ask most people, whatever their god is, where does their god live? Most of them still look up. Okay. So the first written history of gods, right, where they were talking about the planets. And so I say astrology is about measuring the influence of the planets. In any kind of science, we need measuring devices. We need ways to measure them. The way we measure the influence of the planets, we call them signs, houses, and aspects. So for me, the whole system of astrology is really rooted in the planets, and understanding the most dominant planet in your life is a wise thing, because the way I think about it is everyone's looking for their purpose. And to me, purpose is in form, is we're all built for something. We're all made of something, you know? And so I look at a chart, and I look at it with curiosity. What is this chart made for? You know? In your chart, one of the things that jumps out is that your chart is made to open people's minds. You know?
Oh,
I,
yeah.
right. I say
Sometimes
that,
by
but
force.
I want to actually say blow people's minds.
I was like, sometimes by force. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
wow. Okay, so I'm just dropping like a million pins in the sky in my head because you're saying so many things that are grabbing my attention. I don't know if you've seen on my Instagram, but I started doing a series when there are major transits happening where I use all of the gods. So I'm saying like this god coming together with this god and telling the story through that. So I loved that you mentioned Mercury in my chart because I think the last two I've talked about the messenger god coming into contact with the sun, the king, and Uranus and what's happening. Also, I'm kind of jumping out of order here now, but you saw another thing on your Instagram about Mercury activations and spotting synchronicities.
Oh, well, Mercury is the planet of noticing synchronicities. First, I would say Mercury is the planet of noticing, period. If we didn't have a Mercury, we wouldn't be able to process, we wouldn't be able to
Mhm.
see anything, perceive anything, process it, or communicate. So Mercury rules the nervous system. You know, it rules the mind. It rules conscious thought. So part of the value of synchronicities, yes, they're cool, but there's something being communicated. You know, it, right? It's like sometimes we might walk into a room and the carpet speaks to us. You know, right? That things are always speaking to us, and this is the part of us that notices those things is Mercury. And if Mercury is strong in your chart, yes, you notice more because that's what you're built for. It's not, again, it's not that it's just cool. It's something, it's a mechanism you were built for, that you're being shown something because it's your job to see it, process it, and then pass it along.
Ah, okay, very cool. So, switching subjects, thank you for that. People definitely know about your stellar football career. Football was like huge at my high school and early in college. Like, you were the man, like, for sure. Still are, but like, your name was known. I'm curious though about the other facets of who you are. Like, we're talking astrology, we're talking football, because you seem to be wired for deep inquiry outside of the mainstream. You've talked about it a little. You studied Ayurveda in Australia, Chinese medicine, yoga with the Swami in NorCal, cannabis in the Himalayas, astrology. I'm curious, do you attribute that drive to go deep to like, are there specific people you encountered? Are maybe books you've read, childhood experiences? Or do you look at your birth chart and see an obvious clue that this
Yeah.
is going to be your path?
Yeah. My answer is always the birth chart, because if something is dominant or prominent in someone's life, it's going to be dominant and prominent in the chart. 100%. The chart doesn't lie. It doesn't give you all the exact details, but it gives you the framework, and it doesn't lie. So, right, because it's what we're made of. We can only express what's inside of us. And the quick astrological math here is I have Pluto in the first house. And so anyone that has Pluto in the first house has an instinct to go deep, right? And is making a tight square to my moon in the 10th. So part of going deep is related to what I'm meant to do in the world. Okay. The other ruler of my 10th house is Mercury. and it's receiving a tight opposition from the planet Uranus. So thinking outside the box, going deep, thinking outside the box. And I'm a Gemini sun in the ninth house, traveling around the world. Right, and three configurations in my chart, you perfectly summed up. I mean, perfectly summed up those three placements, as if when you were saying it, it was as if you were looking at my chart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just even hearing Uranus and Pluto, like when I hear that, I'm like, okay, things out of nowhere, deep transformation, shadow being brought up to light for futuristic things. So in the early 2000s, the NFL publicly shamed you and suspended you for using cannabis. And your response, from what I know, was to go to the foothills of the Himalayas to study the origins of the plant. So I want to know what did you go looking for and what did you actually find?
I didn't know what I was looking for, and I found religion. So at the moment, I didn't know what I was looking for, but I remember before I retired, reading the Da Vinci Code. And it's kind of a mind blowing moment where I grew up very Christian. And it was the first time in my life that I had been shown a different perspective on the truth. You know? And it was kind of mind blowing. Like, you're allowed to do that, you know? And so it opened the door. My mind started to look around and be curious about where does, like, I look around the world and everything seems so superficial. And I had this sense that there must be some deeper meaning to all of this. And I found myself in India at the bottom of a 2,500-year-old temple, and there was the music, there was the drama. It was all right there. And so I got permission to be religious. I got permission to be spiritual, is really what I got. Because growing up, even though I grew up in church, once I started to make it in the world, I was supposed to be just a good football player. And there was something about that that felt really empty and hollow. As a kid, I had an image of making a difference in the world, and I thought playing football would do that, but pretty much it was just shut up and run the ball. And whenever I expressed a different perspective or a different opinion, they called me weird and they didn't understand. And so I realized this is not the place for me. And then I started traveling and I found all these things, and they just felt like they fit. They just felt like they like a glove. Like, the trying to be a football player was trying to force myself into a tight pair of shoes. But once I started traveling and studying and taking classes and picking up healing modalities, it just felt like breathing. It was weird, but at the same time, it felt so natural to me.
Yeah. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking about this poem I wrote. It was probably somewhere between 2013 and 2016, maybe. I would drive in Los Angeles. I lived in Los Feliz, and I would have to drive a bit east to get to where I worked. And I remember I would get on the freeway and I would see these trees growing right on the side of this freeway that is just choked with exhaust. I mean, there's 24/7 cars. These trees are just there. And I was driving and the light was so beautiful coming through, even the exhaust. LA is very weird. Like, LA can be beautiful in the weirdest ways. It's a very tripped out place. But I remember I wrote this poem, and it was the idea that we should aim to be more like trees because trees grow where they're planted. There's trees right up on the mountains, I think it's the San Bernardinos maybe, that have this beauty, they're luxury. They have the view and all the fresh air and all the space. And then there are these trees born right on the side of this little freeway, but they're thriving. And as you were speaking, it makes me wonder. I've been thinking about this more recently too, about how and my chart gives a lot of indications for this. I move quite frequently. I'm pretty nomadic, and it's a deep soul feeling. And I've felt that's been reflected to me. I can feel it. I'm meant to seed information around the world. And when I travel, when I tell you the amount of travel luck I have, like it's insane. And for you, for me, like we're born in places and we just don't fit. We don't fit. It's very obvious. Like you do not, like, you don't fit here. But those are maybe the places that need some of the information that we're going out to get, or we look a certain way, or we're in certain environments and people expect something. And because we're different, were able to bring like your Pluto, your Plutonian and Uranian like energies and ideas around the world. And I'm able to bring these sort of ideas that maybe wouldn't be expected in the rooms that I'm in.
Yeah. It's we call our app Astrology for Grown-ups, and this conversation has been very much a grown-up conversation. Meaning, a lot of times when people talk about astrology, like when people talk about Pluto, they talk about transformation, Uranus being ahead of your time. That's grown-up speak, meaning that's the mature version of it. But we're all born babies, and it's a process to get from being a baby to maturity. So part of Pluto is facing your wound. Part of Uranus is being the outsider, right? It's like if we can face our wound, if we can handle being an outsider and learning to think for ourselves and resist against the pressure to be like sheep, then the reward is being ahead of your time. The reward is transformation. And that's why I like evolutionary astrology, because we don't take anything for granted. Right? It's free will. Is we have free will to make a strong response to something, or we have free will to not. But if someone has a strong, like someone has a strong Uranus and a lot of Aquarius energy, right? It's like you don't really have much of a choice. You have to go your own way. But can you do it in a way where you bring other people with you, or do you have to do it in a way where it's more isolating? So we all have challenges. One of the things that Steve says is where you got planets, you got problems. And he doesn't mean the kind of problems that you can't solve. He means the kind of problems that make you better by facing them and solving them. They help you step into who you really are meant to be.
Gosh, and I think about my stacked first house, Mars, Jupiter, ascendant, pretty much all conjunct my north node. And, that's first house. It's like, it's fucking gnarly. It's gnarly. But as I've, aged and learned how to like sort of not be so much of a bull in a china shop, I just come in, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? This is ridiculous, like very strong. But as I've learned, like, hey, you can go in and like open a room a bit slower and then use precision like arguments. So, oh, and before I forget, I have the Da Vinci Code right there. It's one of my favorite books. And you probably know this. I figured this out because I have the hardback version with the dust cover. Did you know that there are clues on the dust cover that you can solve?
I did not know that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Look at this. Look at this. You're going to freak out. Okay. Da Vinci Code. So you take up. Oh my God. And I put a sticky note on it. Okay. I have chills. My whole arm. I forgot about this. So I want you, if you don't have the book, buy it with the cover. Everyone listening, I'm not going to ruin it for you guys. I have the answer right here. But if you look on the inside flap, let me take this, let me not take it off. Let me go like this so you can't see it. So you'll go through the inside flap, this part on both sides. And when you go through, I want you to take a second look at it and see if you notice anything. And you're definitely going to notice now that I said it. And when you notice it, get out a pen and paper and write down what you're noticing. And there is a clue that Dan Brown left us so that you could like solve a little extra mystery in the book and for yourself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When you said that, I was like, I've got to tell him that part. I've got to tell him. So, okay. Did you have anything to say? I know I kind of jumped over to Dan Brown rando, but
No, I mean it's a cool synchronicity.
Mhm.
That's the theme. And it's a little bit of synchronicity. So a little bit of synastry is I'm a Virgo rising and my ascendant is 18 degrees Virgo. So your Mercury directly opposing my ascendant.
Yeah, my Virgo's 750. That's not far off at all. Yeah. I didn't really, yeah. And it would be directly opposing. Yeah. Cause I have like a 17 something Mercury. Very cool.
Yep. Yep.
Threading the needle back in a little bit of a different way. I wanted to ask you about this. So, you explained, how cannabis led you to the Himalayas, and then you understand like your own, like this view of your view of religion opens, and then you're able to.
The funny thing about going to the Himalayas is I wasn't looking for cannabis. I was with my yoga teacher. I was with Swami Sita. So it
Oh,
was like it wasn't even on the horizon. I
mhm,
like it, but we're driving up the Himalayas and I look out the window and I just see fields of cannabis. And then we went up to fast for a week up at the top of the Himalayas and like growing like weeds. It just was everywhere.
yeah.
So again, I wasn't looking for it, but in this spiritual quest, the thing that I was quote unquote running away from, it was right there at the very beginning. So it's this, and to me, the message of synchronicity, it really is trust yourself,
Yeah.
trust what you see, and trust what you know. Because Martin Luther King, one of my heroes, said there's God's laws and there's man's laws. Huh? And I think the chart can tune us right into God's laws. We all know man's laws because we've been you know, bombarded with them since we were born.
I'm so curious. I want to have my mind opened even more. So I want to know where you land on cannabis today, because there's been times in my life when I've smoked weed, like in college, I smoked weed more. I had a boyfriend that smoked and friends that did, on and off. But I really haven't, I'd say, in years. And particularly in relationships, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a romantic relationship, what I've found is that it's more difficult for me to connect with someone if they smoke more frequently. Maybe it's just because I'm so energetically sensitive, but I can perceive that they're on a different wavelength. And for me, it creates a sort of a loneliness or a distance when I'm with them. And so I'm wondering if you've ever had that reflected, or like what your take is on it.
Okay. So again, this is easy for me. I always
Okay.
go back to astrology.
Okay.
'Cause for me, when I'm talking about anything, the first question I have is what planet rules this? What are we asked? I have to do the translation to be able to speak my language. And from what I can tell, and the clues are the Mesopotamians, their name for cannabis was the perfume of Venus. Okay. And so we can just take the stereotypes. Someone's listening to music, someone's eating food, okay, and they're talking about, oh, this tastes so good, or they're watching a movie, this is funnier than it was when I right. So, and Venus is the planet of appreciation. Okay. So for me, one of in the munchies, okay, so cannabis, first step is Venus. In my system, Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. And so cannabis, Venus, and Neptune. Venus and Neptune. All right. So I'm starting there, and you start talking about cannabis, and the first thing that you bring up is relationship. Okay. So the planet Neptune rules Pisces, and relationships are ruled by the seventh house. Your Mercury is in Pisces in the seventh house. And I think one of the phrases I use for Mercury in the seventh house, being on the same page, being on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
The need to be
Yeah.
able to connect mentally. Right.
Yeah.
And then here's the kicker, right? I said the Neptune in the fourth house, squaring the Mercury. Okay. So you can see how and also the loneliness, Saturn in the first opposing the Mercury in Pisces in the seventh. Yeah. So wait, because when someone consumes cannabis, they do become more Neptunian, more Piscean, more Venusian, for better or for worse, depending on their relationship with those planets and what's going on in the sky currently. Um, so the way I look at it, it's like, to me, that would be where the work is. You know, that would be where the work is.
The work for me.
Yeah. Mhm.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? I'm curious about that.
Okay. Yeah. So the fancy word for this in astrology is a T square.
Okay.
You know, and people will study astrology and they'll say it's a T square, but very few astrologers can recognize a T square when it shows up. When I say when it shows up, what you just described about what comes up for you around cannabis, that is your T square. So when I say work on it, the things that we have to work on in life, however it looks on the outside, the things we have to work on pretty much are hard aspects. Right?
Uh-huh.
That's why they're called hard aspects, because they require effort. They're not easy. You know? And The other thing about something you mentioned earlier, and this is a first house phenomena that I had to deal with. A lot of times when you have a very powerful first house, you do get scapegoated because first house is about taking action, especially if Mars is there. And if you're the one that actually is the one that takes action, especially with Mercury in the seventh house, the action you're taking, it's not really about you. It's about what you're picking up in the energy, and you're the one that is meant to act on. You're the one that's meant to act on. So, so
Ricky, you're blowing my mind. You
yeah,
are top tier. This is I'm like so happy right now having this conversation.
yeah. And okay, so the other interesting piece here for me here is that in the way I do astrology, the fourth house is the father and the 10th house is the mother. Okay. Fourth house is the father, 10th house is the mother. Yeah. And based on that idea, Neptune in the fourth is talking about your father.
Yep.
And because Gemini is in the 10th house, which is the mother, Mercury rules the 10th house. So that Neptune Mercury square likely is remnants of something you picked up from a dynamic between your parents.
Oh yeah, this is okay. Now you're blowing my mind even more because that was my dad. Now that you're saying it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like all of this is blowing my mind. You guys, everyone listening, I don't even need to say it. You should all be booking readings with Ricky. And what's the name of your app? Didn't you and your wife started an astrology app? What's the
And
name of
Steve,
it?
yeah, Steve was a we.
Steve?
It's funny. It's a cool, quick story. We took a. It was my first time taking a synastry course, and I was about a year. I was about a year out of a divorce, and I had been dating my current wife. We've been dating for several months, and she got into astrology. So we took a synastry class with Steve together. And the final day, what Steve does, he teaches the technique for 3 days. And on the fourth day, he literally gets a sorting hat and puts his hand in and he pulls a name out and he does the technique on to show the class how to do it. So my 40th birthday, he picked my name out. And so he spent the whole day doing a synastry reading on Linnea and my wife and myself. And it just so many things it spoke to our process and helped us appreciate why we're in each other's lives in a way that just blew my mind. And afterwards I said we got to find a way to get this information out into the world, and we didn't know anything about apps, but we said this is relationships are so difficult for people, and but also there's such a rich reservoir of dynamic like umph. I think that's why we keep trying, but they're so difficult to navigate. And I found astrology is so valuable. And so we reached out to Steve and he said, we got an idea. Would you like to help us? And he said, yeah. And he's written 99% of the content. I wrote the Venus. I wrote the Venus section. He wrote the rest.
Yeah.
And the name of the app is called Leela, and Leela is a Sanskrit word that means divine play. Um, and
Beautiful.
yeah, I was talking to my
Beautiful.
wife, and she was just getting into astrology, and she was having one of those moments where her mind was blown. She's like it's all mapped out for us.
Well,
And I said the Hindus called that the Leela, the divine play.
wow, I love it. I I I'm like cheesing. I'm so happy right now. Like people that watch this show, you're gonna be like, you were beaming the whole time. And I'm not I'm gonna jump I'm gonna jump around again. I'm like scrolling through my questions. I'm beaming. And you've talked about the mirror a couple times, and I want to go there and kind of talk about this because last week we spoke for just a little bit, and I shared that I work with men in a program called The Mirror, and I love it. And I'm really been stripping away all of the other things I do so that I can focus on this fully because it's reflected to me constantly that I'm a mirror. I came up with the name,
Yeah,
and then I only realized after naming the program that in the Mayan dream spell, the kin, and the kin is just like your birthday information, let's call it that. So it's a person,
yeah,
Um, the kin that is most supportive to me are known as the mirror. And so my analog, my complementary energy is the mirror. I'm a red dragon and my complement's the mirror. So when you and I were talking and I looked up your birthday, and of course you were born a mirror in the dream spell. And I was like, this is great. Like we're supposed to be like knowing each other and working together. So we're known as analogs. And I know all of this, by the way, if people are interested in knowing more. Everything I know about the dream spell, which is like this much, I'm such a baby. I've learned over the last couple of years from a woman named Tej Foster. And she's been on my podcast once, and we've released some like recordings on Instagram from like secret podcasts that never came out. Like
Yeah.
the system was glitching when we tried to put it out. It was like too, too much. But her name's Tej Foster. You can find her at zavuya.space. That's ZUVUYA dot space. And she knows all of it. But yeah, the mirror, it's almost this idea right now that I'm sensing in the world. It used to be that we would go to school and we would learn things, right? A teacher would just tell you things and then it goes into your brain. And now we're moving into this time, we've been in it for a while, but it's becoming increasingly important that it's like knowledge is everywhere. Now we have AI, like knowledge is just available. It's not this resource that you need to go get from the church or from a special smart person. And what's really happening now is the need to embody what you learn in a felt way. And there's a frequency now that is becoming more and more apparent to pretty much everyone. I mean, I don't meet many people that don't feel that there's something happening that's different. Frequency is so important. And to me, it's becoming really apparent who knows a lot of information but hasn't embodied it. And in the work with the mirror, what I love is that people say, "Oh, you're a coach." I don't ever say that word. I'm not a coach. I'm not coaching people. Um, my clients find me either I'm speaking in a workshop and I say something that intrigues them, or I'm referred a lot of referrals. And it's really just conversations. And in the conversation, I happen to be sensitive to energy in a way that I'm able to notice when something
You
in there.
notice the word just came out. That's that
Mhm.
Mercury.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm able to notice it. And it's so, even in my mind, I'm always like, how in the heck did I know that? It's almost like I follow a ping and it can bounce 12 different places and I'm following it. And then I'll go, hold on, close your eyes. Like, can you re-say that? But this time I want you to say it and focus on your left ear or notice your right thigh because I can feel where it's happening for them. And they'll say it again. And then it's like in their body, they feel where that isn't in alignment for them or where they missed a step. And so I'm curious, like, do you work with any other systems outside of astrology, like human design, or do you ever do men's work or groups like that? Like where you work with people in that way, or do you primarily focus on astrology?
Yeah, I mean, I found astrology and I've tried a bunch of other tools,
Mhm.
and I do a lot of body work. I'm a trained
Oh,
psychotherapist. Kind of like you said, when someone is talking, same way I can sense where it lives in the body, and if you put
wow.
some attention there, it can change things for people quite dynamically.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
So you kind of feel it. People are like, "How does it work?" I'm like, "I don't know." It's like I feel it. And it's interesting because I do readings for people and when I'm speaking, I'll be looking in different directions. They're like, "You look in different spots." I'm like, "Well, that's where the information is it's like in the field and I have to look that way to sense it or pick it up."
Yeah.
Um, you offer astrology workshops and I saw a couple. One was called like, "Why'd you choose your father? Why'd you choose your mother?"
Yeah.
What are your beliefs around that? Like, do you believe that we chose them or do you believe you're assigned things?
Yeah, so my wife does the
Mhm.
marketing emails, and she likes that she really likes that idea.
Mhm.
I used to like it. Now,
Okay.
um, right, honestly, if here's the way what I've noticed, okay, is I mentioned earlier, the mother is the 10th house, the father is the 4th house, okay?
Mhm.
And this is true for relations, this is true for all kinds of relationships, but very much, the way I think about it, everyone in our life is an actor in our play,
Mhm.
and they act at least a little bit. They act differently around everyone than they do around us
Mhm.
because there's something about our connection and what we put out to them that triggers a response in them that's habitual. So to me, it's we bring out in our parents the behavior we need from them is the way that I would say. right? And so the workshops, so we did one on Mother's Day, and the name of the workshop is called Celebrating Mother. And then we did a workshop. We're doing one next week, this upcoming week for Father's Day, called Celebrating Father. And it's two things. It's one, I think it's important because we're half of our mothers and we're half of our fathers. Right? Whether we like them, whether we don't, the reality is we're made from them. Okay. So to find a way to appreciate them as human beings
Mhm.
and have an appreciation for their journey, however well they did, is a boon and a gift to ourselves. And the other part, it's teaching people how to use astrology to understand relationship dynamics. And I think it's charged, but it's juicy, right? The relationship dynamic with parents and the role that the appreciating really is about understanding the role that our parents played in our lives. Because all of us, if we're doing this kind of stuff, we must have at least a little bit of self-love. So whatever happened with our parents, right? We
Mm.
turned out here. And I think we're all old enough, wise enough to be able to reflect back and appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When I think about my dad, it's like, well, well, but some of that energy that wasn't so great is the same energy that is the part of me that makes, especially when I was younger, sort of fearless, willing to take a lot of risks, willing to
What?
kind of.
But your chart is a good example because if we look at your fourth house, okay,
Mhm,
I will just go really, really
mhm.
quickly to your fourth
Yeah.
house. When I look at a house, the first thing that jumps out is a planet in the house, Neptune. And Neptune's wonderful. It's a visionary planet. It's a planet of dreams, right? We love
Mhm.
Neptune, okay? And Neptune making a hard aspect to Mercury. Neptune making a hard aspect to Saturn. So a hard Mercury aspect, a hard Saturn aspect. Okay, this is father stuff. That's not easy. And then if we go to the other ruler of the fourth house, Jupiter, we get an opposition from the sun. Wow, that's powerful. An opposition from the sun, a conjunction from Mars. You know, so and
Squaring Uranus, right?
well,
Mhm.
squaring Uranus.
No, no,
It's a
sun
little
squared.
wide. It's a little wide, but it is semi-square Pluto. See, I don't know if you've got into the minor aspects, but
Yeah,
man, semi-squares and sesquisquares, they sing. Okay, so the point I'm making is you were born to have a difficult experience with father,
yeah,
right? And if you like, one of the things that I've noticed in mythology is in mythology, all the kings, the princes that had dads, they're all kind of cuckoo and messed up, right? All the demigods, the ones that really did things, were the ones that had a father who was not there, right? Because he
yeah,
was on Mount Olympus, right? He was absentee. So there is something I've noticed around strong Uranus, Aquarius kind of themes that we need to get away from our parents.
yeah, yeah.
Right, in order to become who we're truly meant to be. That's all of us. But if this theme is strong in your chart, I see Uranus activations, right? Things happen that get people away from their parents.
And that's a I love the celebrating mother, celebrating father aspect, because I think right now there's so much out there. It kind of gets exhausting where it's like, oh, the labels of I'm this and I'm that. And then people become labels and you see people's bios full of labels. I'm like, oh my God, diagnoses. I'm like, what in the fuck is going on? Like, we got to not, this is not helpful. Like, if we need that initially to figure out what's going on, right? We need to identify, oh, hey, this is an issue and it can be related to this. But then if it's your whole life theme, it becomes pretty exhausting and not helpful.
You got
I tend to believe there's a mix of destiny and free will. I remember I worked for a wearable tech company in LA. And I'll actually take this back one step because you know so much about the gods in the skies. You'll appreciate this. I wasn't going to bring it up, but now I'm like, you're very you know this area. I was in a not great place. I'd graduated college, gotten a first job, had moved somewhere with a boyfriend. Things weren't going well. I was off track, really off track. I was working at a bar, like things were not good. And I get a job offer from Los Angeles, and I wasn't living in LA anymore. They said, "Hey, you want to come work for us?" And the company was called Nyx, NYX, the goddess of the night.
yeah.
And she's the void, and she's dark. And so I get a call from Nyx. They say, you want to come work for us? And I'm like, thank God, like, get me out of this wrong track. So the goddess of the night, and if you guys look her up, you'll see what she represents, and it's dark things. Kind of the mother, the void said, come back to where you belong on a Pluto line, no less. I lived in LA for a long time on a Pluto line. So I come back and it's a wearable tech company. And this is way back in the day. And we had two clients. Our clients were Kanye West and NASA. That was it. I can tell you more later, but um, during my last week working for that company, I traveled internationally and domestically for them. And I was in Orlando at a space conference. The keynote speaker happened to be Buzz Aldrin, one of the Apollo 11 astronauts with Neil Armstrong. So after his keynote, I go up, I shake his hand, and I have a little chit chat with him. It was one of the bonuses of going to the conference. And I said, "Thank you for your service, Dr. Aldrin. Great to meet you." We had a little chit chat. I left. My job ends that week. I'm done. I'm like a music journalist. I write a book. Other things happen in that year. Then I'm running out of money. And I'm like, I need to get a job. I'm in my 20s. I'm like, I got to get a job. I got to get back to work. And back in the day, you would apply for jobs on Craigslist. There wasn't LinkedIn the way it is now. Like that was very normal.
I remember, yeah.
You remember? Okay. Because people are like, Craigslist. I'm like, that's how it was back then. And it was an anonymous company, and I'd applied, and I get a call, and they say, "Can you come out to Terranea, which is a beautiful resort in South, Palos, in Los Angeles?" I'm like, Terranea? I'm like, what? I'm like, am I about to get kidnapped? Like, what is this place? And yeah, I get there and I meet this guy, Jason, and he says, "Hey," he starts interviewing me and he goes, "So is it true that you worked, with NASA project managers?" I said, "Yeah." And I listed off a couple names. I said, "Yeah, that was our client." He goes, "Well, listen, this is for Buzz Aldrin's company." And I said, "Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut?" And he goes, "Yeah, we have this is a licensing and marketing manager role. Your experience lines up with it." And my head was exploding on the patio. And I said, "Oh my God." I go, like 2 days before I quit my job, I was in Orlando. I shook his hand and the guy was like, "What? This is crazy." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Whoa." So, long story short, I get the job. I end up working with him for 2.5 years. And it was so formative in my career. I became friends with him. And from then, I've had astronauts come and find me in public saying they feel close to me, like astronaut Winston Scott, who I had on the show. Like, I've had the weirdest things, and I figured out all of us are seven of diamonds, like in the cards of destiny. And seven of
Oh,
diamonds are known to be from another planet. Buzz is a seven of diamonds. Winston's a double seven of diamonds. So I look at that, right? I look at some key moments like that. I'm like, that was the goddess of the night pulling me, where do you stand kind of on those concepts? Like, is it a combination? Is it all predestined? Is it just all free will?
yeah. Well, a couple of things. One, this is where I'll bring in the concept of karma. You know, and not that if we do something, something's going to happen to us, but karma is more habit. And if you notice, the more you do something, it becomes natural. It becomes natural. It becomes natural. So I think there is free will, but we only have so much of it. Certain things we can change, we can work with. Certain things are so deeply ingrained. There's not enough time in this lifetime to change it. And I don't think we're supposed to. I think we're all being prepared. We're all being built for something. And I think, and I'm a religious person, so I do think that we are all born for a reason. And the reason we were born was to become something. And I think we have free will. Do we fight it? Do we pay attention? And do we follow the signs? I think of when I was a kid, my mom, she used to spank. Right? When I was a kid, is I had free will to take out the trash or not to take out the trash. Free will. Okay. Free will. Okay. But if I didn't take it out, my life was miserable. And I think we have free will, and there's a path for all of us. And I think free will is to recognize and do whatever it takes to walk that path. And it's not like a big God up there telling us to walk that path, but when we walk that path, we get an intense feeling of satisfaction, like we're doing what we were meant to be doing. And I think that's the greatest joy that we can experience, especially when you can do it consistently.
That was such a great analogy. Um, at first, I just saw the scene of you choosing to take the trash or not, but then I zoomed up and it's like, there's some things that might not make sense to other people, like me feeling the deepest, deepest need to move frequently. And I've been to therapy, like, okay, what's the problem?
Yeah,
And that's not what it's about. That's my code for some reason.
got it.
You know?
100% because there's right, you're the
And
there's things
there's karmic consequences if I don't.
if
Like
you
I
don't. 100%. One
my business, when I stay someplace too long, my business falls off a cliff.
yeah,
And it's like, oh, I don't always like, no, I don't want to move. I don't want to. But then I know if I move wherever I'm being called, everything blooms again.
you got it.
So
You got
what's
it. You
what's your oh
no,
yeah.
I was just saying that's beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
that is so beautiful. Thank
Yeah, that analogy that was a good one. That one took I had to take it up one more level, and then I was like, "Oh, man," because it's not obvious to some people. What's your read on what's unfolding on the planet right now? Like, any thoughts on whether like, we're in a cohort of humans, the ones that are alive right now. Like, did we choose to be here? I forget his name. I won't remember the name of the book either. Um I spoke about this book when I had David Palmer on the Leo King, and he's not a fan of the guy's work, but I still think it's interesting. He talks about how he believes people in the United States are reincarnated from ancient Rome and the fall of Rome, and he shows, data from this Russian mathematician about how this could be true. So what do you believe? Is there anything in the astrology in particular you look to? Like,
yeah. There's a little bit of astrology and there's a little bit of football in here. Okay.
okay, yeah.
It's a coach will say, it doesn't matter who we're playing, do your job. So, right, to me, right, we all, Leela, we all have a part to play. And when most people are looking at and wondering what's going to happen, right, that energy that's going on there, right, that's not doing your job. So I get it. I want to know what's happening, but to me, it's from a certain kind of ignorance. Because once you know yourself, once you found that mirror that reflects truth back to you, you know what to do, and you become a powerful dynamic for change. So I think we are definitely. We say we chose here. I would say there's a cosmic need for us to be on the planet right now. But but I'd say humanity right now we're like 11. You know, 11
Mhm.
we're like 11
Yep,
or 12,
yep.
we're there's someone's are really smart. We're pre we're pre-puberty. We're trying to figure it out. And that's why right, nothing's ever wrong because nothing's ever done. Everything is in a constant process of development. This is one of my training. When someone does something, I'm like, you shouldn't be doing that. I remind myself, right? Well, I have a 5-year-old now, right? It's a great reminder. He grows out of all of the bad habits, and
Mhm,
it's a maturational thing. And I think the more compassion and understanding we can have for people that we're all growing up, we're all in a maturation process, then I
mhm,
think we could be more supportive of the process and we don't have to make everything or anything wrong. Uh,
mhm,
That's my big pet peeve is judgment. It's like, what's the value of making something wrong? It doesn't have to be wrong for you to choose something different.
mhm. Yeah, you said something. I think you were just referring to politics, people like saying worried about like Donald Trump or these things. You're like,
Yeah.
he's doing his job.
He's
And
doing his job.
he's
Yes.
doing his job and he's doing it. He is playing it. I mean, to a T. I have a friend here in Nashville and he was feeling a lot of like triggering around who the president was. And I said, listen, it's not that I love him or like him or that I feel a strong allegiance to this person. Just when I was looking at choices, first of all, I was aligned with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And secondly, I've been watching a system falling. The system around us is not working. And I said to my friend, I'm kind of one of those people where like it's falling down. Might as well hit it with a wrecking ball. Let's not let it decay. And he just started laughing. He said, are you kidding? I said, no. I said, we've got a bull in a china shop. If something's going to come down, like this is the guy to take it down. Like, something out of control can happen. I said, it's to me, I want the system to change and evolve and I want it to happen quickly.
This is an interesting point. Is everything you're saying, like everything from
Uh-huh,
my view,
uh-huh,
super consistent with your chart? You know, so the one thing, and I'm sure an astrologer has talked to you about it, but the one thing in your chart that I can't take my eyes off that keeps jumping out is, is the planet Uranus squaring the South Node. So, and Steven teaches a whole, this is cool. Steven teaches a whole technique of taking the South Node and the configuration and turning it into a story, you know?
Okay.
He calls it a karmic story or a past life story. And I took the system and I trained AI to take someone's natal chart and to generate these narratives, these stories. Took me like a year to figure it out and do it, but it's the coolest thing, especially when you do composite charts and you do the past, these narratives of relationship. Oh, it is so cool. Um, but I'm just reflecting back things that you've already said is so in the technique, I won't go into too many details, but in the technique, we look at the ruler of the sign of the South Node as
Okay.
representing you. South
Okay.
Node represents you, and the ruler represents you. Okay. So one ruler of the South Node, Uranus, is in the third house, squaring the South Node. So that means unequivocally, your mouth got you in trouble. Wait, wait. So it was one of those things where it was you were in a like you were in a secret society,
Yep.
and being in the secret society, you don't say anything, but you were like, "I'm gonna say something," and you
Mhm.
did, and it didn't end well for you.
It did not end well for me. It's not been ending well for me here either. I'm like, geez. So I'm like, am I just here to kind of let that hammer drop one more time? I'm on the 29-degree anoretic for Sun and South Node. So I'm like, am I here to let the hammer drop one more time or to break free? It's like, I guess I'll figure out.
The one key and it's something that Steven mentions with this configuration and so beautiful, okay? Because someone ahead of their time, you were ahead of your time.
Mhm,
The issue, you were too far ahead of your time.
mhm,
Okay. So someone who's too far ahead of their time, people don't understand and they turn on the person. Okay.
mhm,
But we come back and it's in the future. So the person comes back and they're no longer as far ahead of their time,
mhm,
but the memory they have is that they were way ahead of their time. And so I'm saying all that to say a big key with the South Node in Aquarius and the North Node in Leo is forgiving the people, is forgiveness.
mm,
It's not their fault they didn't understand.
mhm,
It's more of claiming that you were really just ahead of your time. And sometimes we suffer because of
mhm,
that. You definitely suffered because of that. And right, what you had and what you still have is so valuable. But if we don't forgive people, it comes out in ways where it makes it kind of hard for them to, it's like
mhm.
it's a situation when you're in a relationship and your partner's mad at you and you try to make them feel better and it doesn't work. And then they feel better, and then you're mad because it took so long for them to feel better. And it just keeps going back and forth.
Uh, wow. I mean, so crazy, not so crazy, just showing what a phenomenal chart expert you are. Forgiveness is the number one thing. I mean, I think I recently just posted something like, I'll forget you, but I won't forgive you. Like I literally, I I get enraged. I am like when people do me wrong, I am like, it's scorched earth. I'm
Yeah,
like, you're dead to me.
yeah,
And yeah, it's something I'm trying to work on. I am working on it. And especially, I'd say in the last 2 or 3 years, I've had these experiences of being able to feel in my body what forgiveness feels like. And it feels so foreign because I've always been like, how do people forgive people? Like, you've got to be stupid. I'm just like, that's so dumb to forgive. And I've had these because it makes no, you know what I mean? I'm like, this is foolish. Like, this is how you go down in flames. And I've had these experiential feelings in my body, and then my awareness, my consciousness has been able to expand out and see, like, oh, that's all they could see. Even though that was highly fucked up, that is all they could see.
yeah,
And then it doesn't mean I want to be friends with them or that I want to, like, oh, I'm like, oh, that's just awareness that the thing that's very obvious to me is not obvious to them. And then there's things that are very obvious to other people where I'll have to apologize. I'll say, "Oh my gosh, I did not see that." Like that I saw these two factors and not this third one. And man, if I'd seen that third one, this does look pretty bad.
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that. So the
yeah,
forgiveness thing,
yeah.
interesting. Do you know the cards of destiny system at all?
I don't, no.
So you get two cards at birth, but you were born on a cusp. You're a Gemini, right?
Yeah,
So I think,
say a Gemini, yeah.
yeah, you're a jack of clubs, and I think you're a seven of spades. If you're not a seven of spades, because you're right on the cusp, you'd be a nine of diamonds, but I think you're a seven of spades. So jack of clubs, you're here for initiation into higher spiritual wisdoms. And the jacks have a lot of fire, a lot of energy. And the jack of clubs, you're over the age of 35. So you also can step into king of clubs um, personality. And the king of clubs is the highest wisdom in the deck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, king of clubs. But you're born jack of clubs. I could tell you more about that offline. And then that's your birth card. And then your planetary ruling card is pretty sure the seven of spades. And the sevens, I'm born seven of diamonds. And the sevens and the nines are here very much for spiritual reasons. And the spade is the top suit of mastery. And seven of spades, I mean, look at it, I forget off the top of my head. Let me see what
So cool.
yeah, seven of spades. Yeah, you always have to, could be a little bit of like just a little bit of pessimism because there are things that happen to you in your work life that are very unfair. And you have to operate on absolute faith because it's supposed to be mastery of that spiritual principle, absolute faith that everything that happens is taking you into a higher place of faith in your life. So I can think about some of the stuff that happened in the NFL and,
Yeah.
you know,
It's interesting how a lot of what you're saying maps onto the chart, like,
mhm.
pretty
Mm,
pretty dead on. You
uh-huh,
know, I would say what you just said, I would say the exact same thing about Neptune opposing the midheaven. Neptune in Sagittarius in the third house opposing the midheaven. You know, there's going to be unfair things that happen to you in your career, and you
mhm.
have to see that it's really for a higher purpose. And I did. I did. I was able to see it.
You were able to see it.
You mentioned transits. I look at transits and I also look at secondary progressions. I look at both
Mhm,
together because they
mhm.
tell a story together.
Okay.
And I don't so much look at what's coming up in the future because people just make stuff up. It's funny when a planet is moving into a sign, all the astrologers come out with their predictions. But when a planet leaves a sign, no one ever goes and reviews and looks at the predictions and see how did they do. It doesn't ever happen, and so
Yeah.
it's just talk. So what I what I study when I look at transits and progressions is I study when I know things happen. So, right, all there's probably been several events that you mentioned, changing
Uh-huh,
jobs, moving, it's all these things. If
uh-huh,
you go back and you look at the transits and the progressions on
uh-huh.
those dates, you'll see how astrology works. What's going to come up in the future, it's like, okay. If you go to the past, you see it, you do know exactly how they played out, so you have a better sense of how they're going to tend to play out in the future.
I do that all the time. I go because I keep you're not surprised with all my Virgo. I keep a crazy meticulous calendar. I know that I went on a 20-minute walk this morning with my sister's dog. It's in my calendar. Like I'm a maniac. One of my friends, she said, I never thought of this. She goes, "You are an archivist like no one I know." And I'm like, that's the word. I love pictures, journaling. I love dates, numbers. But I go back to exact, like, hours where I was places and look, and my mind I'm like, "Oh my go" it always blows my mind going back and doing that.
That's how you learn. To me, that when I
Mhm,
teach, that's how you learn astrology.
mhm,
That's how you
mhm,
learn yourself, but that's how you learn astrology because you actually see how it works. You see the
mhm.
mechanism, and it's like, whoa, that's
I call myself a cosmic advisor now, but before I referred to myself as a cosmic detective because I always wanted to be like a spy and a secretary, and yeah, I love going back and looking at those things. And this system too, the cards of destiny, there are charts and you see seven visible planets and then you see all of the years of your life. But I offer year ahead readings and other like relationship decode readings where I can look at synastry between two people and we can see what octaves of what planets are playing out. And you can go through like 52-day time periods in someone's life and see the the energies that are present, and it gets very specific. I remember one time I was dating a guy, and his birth card showed up in my Venus line that year with the Queen of Diamonds underneath it. And we were dating, and then I, found out he was cheating on me. And I found out the girl's birthday, and his birth card was in her Venus line for her that year too. So he was in both of our Venus lines. And the result of that was that my entire business changed. And the Queen of Diamonds is the successful businesswoman. I work with couples and I'll say, oh, I've got a 3 of hearts for both of you this year. Like, watch out for third party energy. And they're like, oh, we were going to be open. I'm like, well, there's divorce cards the year after that. So I probably wouldn't do that. And so it's a really cool system.
Wow,
Um,
so cool.
yeah, yeah. Well, do you have anything else? I mean, I could just keep chatting with you
Yeah,
all day.
yeah, we could talk all day.
We could definitely keep chatting.
Yeah. I get the final thing, 'cause I think
Mm,
what I hope my legacy is, at least from an astrological perspective, is a shift more to focusing on planets. And it's reinforced in this conversation. And again, most astrologers, they would point out Mercury's ruler of the chart, ruler of Virgo. So they would talk about it. But if I was doing a reading with you, I'd spend the first half an hour just talking about Mercury and empowering you as a messenger, someone who notices synchronicities. Right?
mhm. Wow.
That would
Yeah,
be that,
I
that would be the entree into everything else in the chart.
yeah, and that's not anything I've ever heard. Never anything I've noticed either in my chart till you said it. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
One
have
I didn't finish this earlier, but one piece about the strongest planet, it's made up of two different scores. There's a house score, so planets in angular houses get more points,
okay.
first, fourth, seventh, and 10th. So the Mercury in the seventh, it gets more points. And then the other way planets get strength is based on aspects. So the strongest planet is typically the most aspected planet in the chart. And aspects give power because that Mercury is touching so many different areas of life.
Mhm,
Right? It has its feelers so many places, and that's where its power comes from. And it's sitting in the house of the public and other people. So
mhm,
people showing up that have things to say or things that they need to hear.
mhm. Yeah, I've been very curious because Uranus just went into Gemini, and Uranus is about to conjunct my midheaven at 4 degrees and 15 minutes Gemini. So I've been doing a deep dive there, but having this knowledge that you just shared, knowing that even though sometimes this desire to notice things and speak about it has not been rewarded, it's just it feels comforting to know, hey, this is what you're here to do. And you just get, not your job isn't always everything's great. There's parts of the job that are great and parts that aren't great. So,
And for you, the thing that Steve would stress a lot is the South Node.
mhm,
Is again, like it's in the thing he stresses with the South Node is where we have to have patience with ourselves.
mhm,
It's real. And the kind of wound that the South Node represents takes time to heal. Other thing I'd say that's related to it is anything that's connected to Saturn. I'm talking about the Saturn opposing to Mercury. Mercury, right, being heard, right? And anything connected to Saturn, the thing we have to do is extend the timeline, right?
mhm,
Because Mercury, Saturn, it's going to take time to be able to put the words right. And it's going to take time for other people to be able to understand those words.
mhm.
So it doesn't pay off early, but if you stick with it, no doubt about it, 100%, it will pay off. It will.
Wow. Thank you for that. That feels like a little gift. I've really appreciated this conversation. This has been so great. And if you ever want, I'd love to just give you, I'll just, because you did so much. This is very kind of you to offer so much information about my chart. If you ever wanted a reading or do a synastry for you and your wife on this, the relationship decodes are fun.
That's
Um, yeah, I would be happy just to do it for you as a
cool.
thank you. But yeah, and I've also, yeah, we'll stay in touch. I've had an idea for a couple of months about a group of men that I have that I feel like all of our different superpowers combined, it could be cool to have more men in the conversation because there are so many women in the conversation that are a little more vocal. And I love working with men and I love the perspectives you guys bring. And there's a few guys I have in mind that I know that it's like all of you come at things from a little differently and it could be a very cool idea. So,
Yeah,
mm,
please let me know.
yeah, yeah,
I really enjoy talking to you.
yeah. I really enjoyed it too.
That Mercury opposing my ascendant. My wife has Mercury at 18 degrees Pisces, so I really vibe with this kind of back and forth of there because right this Pisces Virgo opposition, it's amazing because it's the ability to take the spiritual but also take the earthly details and to bridge the two together. So
Yeah.
I'm
That's okay.
all
I
about
didn't think about that. Okay, now you're blowing my mind more. So my program, The Mirror, is under my brand, The Karma Matrix. And if people go to the website, just thekarmamatrix.com, you can see. But I blend together my 17 plus years in the tech world, working with these strategists with the spiritual. And my clients are like, I was at a house. He's an inspirational speaker. I was referred to him by a friend in LA. And after the reading, he goes, I don't understand. He goes, I thought you were going to come in here smelling like patchouli and wearing like a plaid skirt. And I was like, what? He goes, that was crazy. I said, yeah. I said, it's real. It works, you know, because I've just never seen these things blended. So, yeah. You said your wife's Pisces. Let me look at this really quick. I always find the Sabian symbols so interesting. I don't have my glasses on. It's kind of hard to read. Okay. Like at that age, I'm like, I can barely read this. Um,
I have that book.
you do?
I do have that book. Yeah.
So she'd be the 19 Pisces. So her Mercury is a master instructing his disciple for the transfer of power and knowledge, which keeps the original spiritual and creative impulse of the cycle active and undeviated.
Hmm.
And she's working on the app. Like, so cool. And God, mine's an Easter parade. The capacity inherent in all great sociocultural images to unite the members of a community in a display of excellence.
Oh.
And that is definitely what my job was. I was a taskmaster with the people that had to work on my teams. I was like perfection or nothing. I was not a great manager.
I'd love to.
Okay.
Been a good you'd have been a great football coach.
You know what? Maybe.
Great football coach. Yeah.
I would have. You know, it's one of my clients. He's so great. He's a head basketball coach at a college. And he said to me, he goes, when I get the budget, he's like, girl, you're coming in to coach the whole team on like all of their stuff. I'm like, yes, because I love it. Like, I love working with men. It's just, I have clients that are women, you know, and I love all of my clients and they know that.
Yeah.
But there's something about working with men where they appreciate some of my directness. Men work differently. Like when men have something that they're looking to solve or figure out, there's a focus and it's just a little bit simpler. And once you guys get something, it's almost like there might need to be reminders, but it clicks a little faster. And I'm not on like 9 calls deep still. I'm just like circling around, like, we got to focus, ladies. You know, we got to get out of the emotions and get logical. So, yeah.
That is so awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. And I'm leaving for Oahu in like 2 days, but I'm going to try to get this up before I leave, if at all possible.
Yeah, well, have a wonderful trip, and yeah, I mean, the midheaven is receiving a lot of activation, so it's awesome.
Oahu, the Mercury midheaven. I'm going to I also have like a Uranus hit there too. I'm like, get ready, Aubrey. So, okay. Thank you so much, Ricky. Take care. Bye,
Yeah.
guys. Peace.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and stay immersed in the infinite drop.